I think most of you are on East Coast time here. Just let me grab this second here. Along with myself, I have Jen Kolb with me. Jen's my colleague in crime here. We work across the country a lot on workforce development issues at the state and regional levels, as well as with companies and colleagues directly. So Jen and I is going to split up a little bit the presentation part here, and also go through some examples of what we have been seeing in this at the state level and other states. We have a lot of good information on what's going on in your state from our talent base that we have there that I think you'll find interesting. And just to give you real quick, a little bit of my background, I came from the corporate world, and I actually came from energy. I got about 38 years in either the natural gas, the electric, and in some of the biomass projects also. That a large portion of my life was in that city that's behind me. And my job was for the first 21 years.
Which is what, Pittsburgh?
That is Pittsburgh.
All right. There we go.
Right. For the first 21 years, my job was to keep those buildings warm and keep the steel plants going. The next portion of my life was keeping the lights on from the electric side. And so that's this particular presentation here, and with you guys is very near and dear to my heart. Another little piece of my background: for almost 3 years, I was on the Ford Motor Corporation Alternative Fuel Vehicles Advisory Board. And we looked at, electricity, fuel cells, propane, natural gas, any combination of that. That was pretty interesting going forward. But that's a little bit of my background. Jen, why don't you give a little bit of yours, and we'll jump right in here and give you some good information.
Perfect. Thanks, John. It's great to meet everybody. I'm Jen Kolb. I'm our VP of Business Development. So while John comes from the corporate world, I come from the education side of things. So been on the education side of workforce development for my entire professional career. Really at Tallo, I kind of work cross sector between our local school partnerships, K-12 partnerships, then into our 2-year, 4-year post-secondary ed programs, and then straight into the workforce and building that end-to-end ecosystem. How do we start at 13 and get people on track for meaningful, high-paying careers? So excited for what we've got to share today. Like John said, we pulled some data on Maine specifically, so hopefully we share some things that everybody can take away from this meeting. Marty, I know you had another speaker. Do you want us to dive in now?
Stephanie, would you pop in and say something? And before you do, I want to mention, so I think both Laura and Francis are looking for opportunities, so we're going to have them introduce themselves too. But I have, this might sound like I'm being facetious, Francis and Laura, but I'm not. You should create a Tallow profile. I think that Jen might end up showing you how to do that, but it's pretty straightforward at tallow.com. But it's I have done so as a test, and it's quite a good tool. But yeah, Stephanie, over to you. Introduce yourself if you would.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Stephanie Treskill. Glad to meet you all. I'm founder of Intwork, a company that helps recruiting agency that helps companies, particularly in the energy and environment and engineering fields, find skilled workers. Our focus is diversity hiring with a special emphasis on foreign trained engineers. But we have a wealth of jobs. We open our doors to all candidates. So even though we have a specialty in BIPOC and immigrant professionals, we welcome US born and trained professionals as well. So If you're a company looking for workforce, we have a massive pipeline of people looking to move to Maine who have the types of skills you're looking for. If you're a candidate, please upload your resume at our website, and I'll share those links. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mark.
Stephanie. Do you play the guitar?
I do. Is it in the background? Yeah,
I
you
can
can
see the
it. Yeah.
guitars.
We
I
have a
love
lot
it.
of musical instruments.
In
Yeah,
a
we
future
play.
one, we're gonna have, we want to hear some music, so good. All right, let's create those Tallow profiles and get involved with IntWork. And the website is intwork.com, correct? INTWRK.com.
That's right. I'll send a link. And
Okay.
also you can follow us on LinkedIn as well.
Cool, but yeah, Jen Kolb, we're dying to see this Maine talent. Is it the brain drain, or is it the brain coming in, or both? So let's hear it.
Yeah, let's dive right in. So we've got a lot of content. So we will talk fast, but we welcome questions and want to make sure we address any questions that anybody has. So we're gonna, like John said, kind of go back and forth, but we did put together an agenda so you knew what to expect. So we're gonna walk through what's happening in the workforce today, what's important to talent, what's important to talent seekers. You're gonna get to see Tallow and some data that we are able to derive from our talent population. We'll look at that specifically for Maine. We've also incorporated today some key insights on what early talent Gen Z, high school and early college students think about employability options right now. We're going to show you a few examples of how we could make this work in Maine and give you some key insights to help with fit, not force. So what we call making sure that students get on the right path and folks get on the right jobs that are meaningful, which ultimately leads to retention. So John, I'll pass it back over to you.
Sure. Yeah, there's a few points that many of you may know some of these, some may not. But again, things have changed the last few years. And part of the workforce is driven, the workforce issues, the shortages are driven by some of these points. Again, baby boomers like myself are, leaving industry in record amounts. Birth rates have dropped below replacement rates. 30 years ago, 35 years ago, the average family had 4 kids, 4 point something, 6 or whatever. Now it's like 2.1. So, that's creating some shortage there. The unemployment is dramatically dropping across the country. 2 years ago, the rates were, spiked up there 14, 16%. Now, many of the states we're working in, they're down to the 4% level. And that's really in those states considered full employment. So it's not like there's a lot of talent sitting there. Virtual employment obviously has become much more acceptable, and that's good, and that's bad depending on how the state looks at that and goes forward. Even though the states have cut back now on the some of the unemployment subsidies and all that, it's not like the talent's rushing back to work. So this may take a little bit. Women have chosen to remain home. Others face difficulty in finding childcare, so they're staying at home. Remote workers are satisfied with even a reduced income, that their family time is more important, and remote work over commuting jobs is very attractive. For 38 years, I lived 47 miles from downtown Pittsburgh. So my round trip right into that town and back out, I drove almost 100 miles every day. And now a lot of the jobs I did, I would never have to do that. So the remote aspect is becoming very attractive. Want to hit the next slide there, Jen? Okay, here's just some stuff. When I say recent, this is in the last probably week and a half I've seen these. But the first one was 4 weeks ago. Amazon announced they're bringing all their people, back to the workplace. That status was, changing from remote to on-site. Last week, they retracted that whole statement. In the future, it's up to the team leads if the people ever have to come back to a physical location. Now, in some jobs, absolutely you have to. In the ones you don't, you don't have to. So other words, it has just basically opened up the talent base across the country. There's the Mom Project. This helps mothers access better opportunities from home. Like this group raised $80 million. Serena Williams is a big advocate behind that. But that'll put a lot of the mothers of remote and part-time basis back into the workplace. As of June this year, over 4.3 million employees decided to leave their jobs in pursuit of meaningful opportunities. That causes a problem too, unless you get them in the right fit, in the right jobs going forward, that's meaningful to them. And that's kind of a couple of the points that Jen had mentioned. And last week, one night, this was like a 1:30 in the morning, I'm up, and I believe it was on CBS, but they had a whole feature there just focusing on the fact that talent acquisition is of a national scope now. You're not just looking in Maine. You're looking across the country for talent that can work remote, or talent across the country that is interested in Maine. This slide here summarizes a lot of Tallow. Basically, in the center, we have a digital ecosystem that works with all the different stakeholders, whether it's government, business, industry, colleges, military, and all the different types of talent, from as young as age 13 right up to a guy like me that's 70. It's that whole range. And we have a whole set of solutions kind of around the outside, from the data and custom events and communications, job opportunities. Actually, we just launched yesterday. Over 200,000 companies will be showing their opportunities on Tallow, and it represents about 3.2 million opportunities a day. So that has just launched through us. In this year alone, we've been featured on, you can see at the bottom, several major news outlets. In fact, we've been in Forbes 7 times. So that just gives a little background there. When we go into a state or region, again, it's a, if you want to hit the next slide there, Jen, it's kind of a whole ecosystem of talent, of stakeholders. You can't just go in and build a successful workforce just working with the Department of Ed, or just the Department of Commerce, or just industry. You need to build that whole side of it. The people on at least who registered for this call, or who we've already talked to in Maine, represents all those blue, light or purple, light or dark purples areas. That when we go into a region, if we have 2 or 3 of those, it's usually success. That's what kind of interest there is in Maine.
Yeah, I've always liked this slide, John, that you, so, I mean, we do have a number of these people on this call. So the lighter colored ones are either represented here, or is that you've spoken to here in Maine. So we're filling in the puzzle.
Yep, the light color purple were people that registered for this webinar. The dark purple are ones we've already met with in the past. And again, you'll see the talent part of this in a second. One more slide here, and then we'll just show you a couple things and get you real good data on Maine. This is key. This is workforce development begins with the talent, but it has to go through me. From a corporate world, it was, making sure that there was a talent pipeline that fit the needs of my company, and that my company fit the needs of that talent. Other words, that it had purpose and meaning for them, and they like to work in the environment that I'm in. Pennsylvania, where I'm from, is not a whole lot different than Maine. We got 0 and 5 degree nights. And if you don't have a workforce that's willing to go out and work in that kind of environment and like that kind of environment, you can't retain them. So that's a big problem. After I spend 2 or 3 years training them, I lose them. That was I'm one of the co-founders of Tallo, and that was one of the driving forces, getting a talent pipeline ready and willing and in a meaningful career for the corporate world. So we work for talent from middle school up through post-secondary, and that group is pretty much the Gen Zs, which run up to age 24 now. In the early career, some of them are there. And then from that early career right up through, the adult side, where a lot of this is reskilling and upskilling and getting them in the right parts. That's the millennial and Gen X's. And we have all kinds of solutions for both the talent and the talent providers. This next slide here is just a few of the companies that we represent, that we are deeply into their workforce development initiatives. And there's one on there may be pretty interesting to you, which is Abbott Labs. And when Abbott got the contract to develop the rapid COVID testing machines that were built in Maine, they had a problem filling those jobs. I got a call at 7:00 Saturday night, and they needed 100 people to be able to fill those last spots. And I said, when do you want these by? They said, tomorrow night at 7:00. This was Saturday to Sunday night. We pulled it off for them. We are now Abbott Labs national partner. So, and that all happened because of Maine. But
We pulled it off. John called me from the ice cream store on my Saturday night, but we did pull it off.
Right. And we just rallied the troops. We have the talent sitting there. We knew what they were looking for. We reached out to them and got them over a weekend. This last slide just shows you a little bit here on our talent population. We have over 1.6 million users on our platform. About 45% of those are in middle school, high school. The rest of those are all beyond that in the more adult side. We have talent in over 29,500 high schools and over 4,000 colleges. You can see the breakout there. You can see it geographically. They're located, right across the country, pretty much equal distribution based on populations that you look at. And one of the real key things here is over 700,000 of those are minorities. So that's, again, a real key point now in, the diversity side going forward. Now we're going to flip this and give you some, information about your state from the talent we have already in your state, even though we haven't done anything in your state yet, other than talk to some people. Go on, Jen.
Yeah, so kind of transitioning a little bit. Hopefully that set the stage for who we are, what we do, how we do it. But we wanted to share some data with you about what we're seeing in Maine. So currently on Tallow, we have about 2,700 users just in the state. So that's a screenshot of our heat map, the system. So this is a split of, like John said, high school, college, workforce talent. Specifically interested in these green energy related fields, there's over 500 people. So these are, again, this is self-reported data. So this is our users who have raised their hand and said, I'm looking for an internship, an apprenticeship, a job, a 2-year, 4-year pathway to get into it. So I know there was someone on the call when we first all logged in, they said, I'm a self-advocate promoting the industry. So that's probably what you're seeing a lot in these people. They're already interested in this industry. They'd be a great source of talent. We did expand it outside of just looking at Maine. So the screenshot here, you can see in the New England area, holistically, there's over 40,000 people on that are, again, looking for those opportunities. And then if you look at that same geographic region, but interested in energy, there's over 9,000 users. And then this bottom image, I think, is most interesting out of all of it, when we know the world is struggling with the workforce problem right now, not only does Maine have to look at who's in their backyard, but you guys also need to look at what you have access to from a talent perspective outside of the state. So there are already over 8,000 users on Tallo who have listed Maine as a place they want to move to. So it's one thing to tap into the workforce that's there, but also giving you power and access to reach into that talent that's not in your state, but has said, I'm interested in finding a way to get there. So that's what these screenshots are. If you have access to Tallo, you could log into the search and see these users, and then take it one step further to actually send them a message and engage, no matter what kind of opportunity you have, as long as it's educational or career related, then you could start having that one-on-one communication and recruiting for whatever kind of program you have. Jumping in here now, we're really getting into the weeds of the data, but I think this information is so valuable. So nationally, if we take a look at this industry, so talent that's interested in forestry, agriculture, energy, and manufacturing, there's over 267,000 users. Now, why this is interesting is because often we see talent doesn't know what they don't know. And a lot of industries, a lot of companies, a lot of colleges we work with, they really do have to kind of prime the pump, if you will. They have to get people interested or excited about the jobs. So not only could we put a strategy in place to build interest in these industries, what is most helpful is you already have a really strong talent pool to start with. Over on the right-hand side, you'll see 39% of the Tallow talent is interested in those sectors: forestry, agriculture, energy, and manufacturing. And that's just the people who had already said, hey, I want to move to Maine. So left-hand side is looking at national data, but the right-hand side, those are people who are interested in those industries and they want to move to your state. Bottom left, this one right here where my cursor is, the top states that Maine is currently attracting talent from: Massachusetts, Texas, and California, top 3. Super interesting. I would have thought it would have been primarily northeastern states to see Texas and California there. You're attracting talent all the way from the West Coast, and you can see more states listed below. And also,
So Jen, somewhere when you're setting up a profile or something, you pick the states where you'd be interested in relocating or something like that?
Yep, exactly. So when you build a Tallow profile, we ask you a series of questions that kind of help you and help us guide you and recommend things that might be the right fit. So one of those questions is, where do you want to live? A map just like this pops up. You can pick states, or you could say you don't have a preference, but that is part of the process when you're building out that Tallow profile. Yeah. And Ben, from your standpoint from the chamber, I think one thing that would be really helpful is over on the right, where you can see time frame to workforce. So not only can we see, okay, who's there now and ready for a job and in these industries, but if we know what jobs we're going to have 2, 3, 4 years from now, we got to look at who's in the classroom and are they on track to fill those jobs, so we can actually predict if you are going to have a talent shortage in specific industries, or if you have enough students on the right track to get into those careers. So that's what that screenshot is there. Diving in to still Maine talent, but looking at employers specifically and industry interests. So 61% of the talent surveyed nationwide are interested in those industries. And over on the right, you can see some of those industry or some of those companies that students raised their hand for and said, this is who I want to work for. Really interesting, right? To see Tesla up there at the top, followed by BMW, Toyota, 2 of our partners, John Deere, Bosch, Honeywell. So it just really neat to be able to have access to this insight, not just industry, but even calling out specific employers of where folks would really like to work. And then moving right along. So going back to the retention, attraction, and risk, there's a lot of data on this slide. I know this is getting recorded, Marty, but if anybody wants us to share it out, we're happy to. But we talked about the top states Maine is attracting talent from. Also, just as valuable, if not more, the top states that Maine is at risk of losing talent from. So that would be us looking at talent in Maine and saying, where are they wanting to leave to? And then even breaking that down further, not looking just at states, but also looking at cities. So are there certain cities where people want to stay, or are they looking to move cities or go somewhere else? Bottom, kind of middle of the screen here. So just calling out this bullet. So the talent attraction. So 38% of talent interested in moving to Maine are a racial and ethnic minority. And so what that tells us is there's a huge opportunity to increase diverse talent that is getting into these clean energy jobs. So the last slide, I'll talk about Maine specifically with those employers, and then I'll take a pause to see if there are any questions. But 3,254 of our users are interested and have raised a hand in wanting to be employed by some of Maine's top employers. So John already shared the story about Abbott. Coming in second place is General Dynamics. What I think is so fascinating about this, if I'm an employer, if I'm a chamber, if I represent workforce development or economic development, it's one thing to draw someone in. It is so much of a stronger argument when you can draw them in with the job waiting for them, right? So to say, not only are they trying to get to your state and are they interested in employers, it very well could be, right, that someone has said, oh, I want to work for General Dynamics and live on the East Coast, and they've never heard about Maine or the opportunities or what they can do in the state. So having just access to that data to see not just that they want to be there, but who they want to work for is critical in developing that workforce strategy. So a lot of data points I pulled out there. We wanted to say, all right, once you have that data, how do you start recruiting early? But I'll pause really quick to see if there are any questions.
Yeah, let's get some questions going. Actually, one of the ways that I like to spur this, if you don't mind turning your camera on for a second and giving me a little smile, and we could do the smiling screenshot. And that's you find when you smile, it makes you more willing and ready to engage. So if you're in the mood and you don't mind, give me a little smile here and we'll grab it. I'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, that was good. I got you. Thank you. So,
I stopped sharing screens for you.
Oh, that was good. Very slick. So, right, there's tons of questions. I can imagine that people would have questions about the talent that's moving in and out of, I don't know, Biddeford or Rockland or something like that. But what comes to mind for anybody before I start picking on you? Maybe Linnea or Jack or anybody? Laura, questions?
Yeah, I have a question, very high level. Have you heard of or worked with the website / group liveandworkinmaine.com? Do you partner with them?
I can pick that up. Actually, I had, again, this is like the week before COVID hit there. So this would have been 2019, I believe, was the conference that Educate Maine had. And I actually attended that. And it's out there. We had, several presentations, and I did get a chance to talk to them at that point. Then very shortly after that is when things just kind of went into a halt. So I am aware of them. They're great. They're good. Most of the programs you have up there going are good, and we promote those kinds of things. If we work with a state or region companies and that, we'll drive them right to those types of sites. But that is the extent that I know them. I had a chance to meet with them at that time.
That's good. Ben?
Yeah, thanks, Marty, and thank you guys for the presentation. I thought that was very helpful and really interesting to see the data. Two of the data points that stuck out to me were the first being there's currently 2,700 Maine users that are using Tallow, and then 8,500, I believe, was the number of folks who look at Maine as a potential destination. From your guys' perspective, what is the kind of barrier, the next barrier to ensuring we can get those people employed? Like from Tallow's perspective, what are some of the issues that you guys are running into to help get those people from being prospective to actually employed and having a job?
It's basically up to the corporations, the chamber, the Department of Workforce, the economic development groups that we go in and work with. Here's perfect timing, Jen. Here's a perfect example. We were asked by this is under the Department of Commerce, the South Carolina Manufacturing Alliance, to initiate a program in South Carolina because Boeing had moved into there, BMW, since then Mercedes and Volvo, but they were going to have this great workforce shortage just on advanced manufacturing. So we launched a program there, and that program was supported by the Department of Commerce, Department of Ed, the Business and Industry, the Manufacturing Association. And right now, and this is what will happen in Maine too, we have over 120,000 users in the state of Maine. About 40% have an ethnic background. It probably won't be that strong up in your side. There's over 200 colleges or 200 high schools and college or companies on, and 35 colleges. That's what really built, that ecosystem is just thriving like crazy down there. So they're getting jobs. The companies are all involved. They're searching. We have actually 2 initiatives in transitioning military out through that state, where we worked with the bases, making sure those guys have opportunities and opportunities in South Carolina. So this is the next step, is somebody in Maine take a step forward, because this talent is all coming on, not because of anybody pushing anything in Maine. We're talking to people, but we haven't launched any kind of program up there. So that's kind of the next step, whether it's the chamber, economic development, business and industry, then that gets the machine going and it turns on. Right now that 2,700 plus talent in Maine, the rest of the world is looking at your talent, because we got to get your companies on board and part of this. So, that's the flip side of this. When we built Tallow, we built it after an athletic model called Rivals.com. Rivals knows where every athlete is in the country from like 7th grade on. And it puts that athlete on a level playing field. That example, one of the other co-founders, the main one to come up with the idea, played football for a little town 50 miles out of Pittsburgh, 60 kids in his graduating class. He could kick a football far and punt and that. Rivals saw him, found out about him, and he got a full ride to Purdue in the middle of the country. That's what we want to be able to do for talent. So you're like a Purdue. You want to find the best talent out there, you can get on, attract them, tell them, and you are in a great state. This is why I've spent a lot of time in Maine, more than I normally would do on any particular state. We kind of move on, but I'm an outdoors guy. I hunt in Maine, I fish in Maine, I love Maine. So I'm just trying to find a reason to be up there more. But that would be the next step, is, launch this forward. And then that talent will stay in Maine. You'll attract a lot of new talent into Maine. And you can satisfy a lot of the Maine jobs too. If you don't have the talent, some of this can be remote. And they may be in California or Seattle, Washington. And providing, the workforce that you need in Maine if you can't get it or you don't have it there.
Yeah, maybe one more quick question. I see Bill's got his hands up. I know, Jen, you got a few more slides to get through.
Yeah, well, The difference between this program and like Indeed or other things is the ability for employers to identify and directly recruit workers around the country. Is that accurate?
Very
That
accurate.
is very accurate.
Okay, so right now the platform has a bunch of talent that would either like to come to Maine or is in Maine, and the only jobs they're seeing right now, and the only employers recruiting them are outside the state of Maine. Is that correct?
Well, like,
Unless you include admin, yeah.
yeah.
Right, but that's a
Well,
small thing, right?
Yeah.
So to answer Ben's question, the way we use this platform is employers need to get on this platform and colleges need to get on this platform for recruiting people to Maine and within Maine. And so that they can use this, and we're not, right now it's working against us. All this talent is leaving Maine because they haven't even shown up on the platform. There are no Maine employers on this. So if this is not helping us, and the way to make this work is to get employers and colleges on this platform using it to recruit talent.
Mhm.
Correct?
Yep.
Got
Yeah, you
it.
said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jen, give us some insights, look like on Gen Z and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, Ben, to your point, we got to get people hired now, right? But also we have to at the same time be running a parallel race of once we get jobs filled now, who's filling the jobs 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from now? And that's people in the classroom. So if you're an employer and you're not thinking about future jobs, then you are already behind. So 70% of Gen Z are deciding on their future employers in high school or early college, and 46%, so over half of that, is making their choices in high school. So they're getting messages on Tallow from employers we work with that say, hey, did you know if you go to this school, we'll give you this scholarship and we'll have a job waiting for you? The landscape of talent is so competitive. And so students are thinking about it. They're thinking about it early. When it comes to how they make their decisions, so 73% indicate that work environment, work-life balance, job/skill fit are most important when considering a future employer. So John shared, his personal story of having to commute 43 miles, was it, John, one way? Kids are really looking at that kind of stuff and know what's important to them. They are in a digital age with immediate gratification that none of us had access to. They swipe up, swipe left, swipe right, and everything they want is right at their fingertips. So having that work-life environment and work-life balance is something that's super important to them. And then 75% said they would be more inclined to work for a future employer if they were given more information about connection and informative sessions, basically having a conversation, right? Building a rapport, building a relationship with that future employer before it's time to get employed for a job. Often kids are passing by offices and buildings and they have no idea what's going on behind closed doors. So if you're first, right, you're probably going to make a really big impact on those students. We've touched on this, but just wanted to show the data to support that investing in Gen Z, we know it's a long-term investment. So Ben, to your point earlier, we will share the struggles that a recruiter will share where, they have an open job rec, it has to be filled today. So they need to get people in seats. And so having a long-term pipeline is an investment, right? Because you might start spending dollars, spending time, engaging, and it's going to be 2 or 3 years until you see that pipeline fully develop. But what we do know about Gen Z versus millennials is that they're loyal, they're purpose-driven, and if you invest in them, they're going to stay. So you can see if you add up, and it's changed significantly after the pandemic by increasing over 50%, almost 75% of Gen Z plan and expect to stay in their first job for 4 years or longer. So again, an investment, but paying off in spades down the road if you make that commitment early on. 59% of Gen Z in 2019 said that it was important to establish connections with employers, even if they didn't have an immediate job opening. You can see 2020, how that grew significantly. We're doing the research right now for 2021, and we'll have a new updated percentage to report. But as we have all become digital natives and in our own spaces in the pandemic, we're seeing that it is even more important and that there's such a need and desire for connection and building rapport, even with this new audience. So you want to make sure you're doing that. And then last, this is in the news everywhere, right? Everybody's talking about, can we use TickTock to hire? Can we start using video resumes to recruit? And the answer from Gen Z is no. They say they don't want mom and dad, and they certainly don't want an employer watching what they're doing in their social space. Then they want to keep those things separate. So only 9% of Gen Z said they want to hear from future employers on TickTock. Where they want to connect is through email, through professional sites, and through events. So you can see we've got those listed out there for you, but very bottom of the total poll was that social engagement. So when it comes to recruiting, hopefully those are some points that can kind of help you in that process as you build a pipeline, but ultimately know that the early talent, they want to hear from you directly. They want to hear from you often, but don't do it on TickTock. Pausing there, Marty,
I'm not even on TikTok, so don't worry.
Me neither.
Do you want to pull up an actual Tallow window? Is that useful? I've got mine going, or you could there's probably a better surrogate Tallow profile to use, but you certainly could use mine if you like.
Yeah, no, I've got this here. I actually had already done a search. So this is Maine. I think since we put together those slides, Sean, the population's grown even more by about 700 students. So we've got 2,774 users in Maine now. So this is what it looks like if you have access as a college, as a company, as a workforce development group looking to recruit. So you could filter by a lot of different categories over on the left-hand side. So I've got the state filter for Maine, but you could also pull up education level or graduation year, career interests. There's that location preference that we talked about. Work experience, accomplishments, responsibilities, soft skills. I know a lot of people are moving away from degree-based hiring and looking to skills and experience, badging, schools, GPA, courses, gender, race or ethnicity, first generation students. So a lot of different filters. And then once you find an audience that fits the opportunity you have available, you can send them a message directly. Can actually message up to 25 users at a time. It blind copies everybody, so nobody knows they're getting that message. But that is how you recruit the talent who you think is the right fit for the opportunity. So, we are long past the days of just posting a job rec and hoping your dream candidate finds it and applies. Instead, we want to give you the tools to say, here is my opportunity. You are the right fit. Please come and work for us, because the data shows that's what people want. It's what people are pulled in by. And so that's what we give those colleges, if you're thinking about university or community college recruiting, but also our employers for active jobs and internships and things of that nature.
Does anybody want to see one of those drop downs expanded or anything? Or keep going, Jen, but if there's something, I think people are always kind of interested in maybe this is old hat, but like who's in there that wants to leave Maine?
There you go.
Yeah, let's do the location preference, and that might be neat. Let's see who's looking to move to Maine. We'll pull up that one. And this side that I'm showing you is different than if you go to Tallo.com and sign up. We think you all should do that. But what that experience will look like is this here. So it's where you're building out the Tallo profile. It is completely free. It is always free for our users, but this is where you are telling us who you are, what you're doing, what you're interested in. And then we are taking the information you put on your profile to help match you to those right opportunities. So there's a resume builder, there's over $20 billion in scholarships, there's 3.5 million jobs, there's 200,000 active companies looking to recruit. So anything and everything, if you do go to tallow.com and create your account, just know that information is going to help us get you matched with the right opportunities. So here we have the talent interested in moving to Maine. So I think it'll be really neat to look at them on the heat map. It'll load here for us, and this also, John, this number has also increased. It's over 10,000 people now have raised their hand and said that they are interested in moving to the state.
Yeah, that just jumped, what, 2,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, the good thing with us, all of our data is real time and live. You're not going to census data that's, now the new census data isn't that old, but everybody, does that. And they get this data that's dated, where we go out with a survey, bango, we get it back. That's why all these news outlets just follow us, because it's relevant, to the talent we're going after and the timing. Go on there, Jen.
Yeah. No, that's all really good points. You're right. It's all active data points. It updates on command based on you running filters and reports. So it's all live. The other thing I think worth noting to that, for a lot of the states we work with, we'll do what we call a perception analysis. So we showed you a lot of data that we pulled leading up to this presentation that we thought you might find interesting. But if you're in workforce or economic development and there's something that you are really curious about or you want to know more about, we can always segment cohorts of the population, pull and survey basically, and find out what makes people interested in moving to Maine, or what industries of the talent that's there are they most interested in, what employers. So we can always do a further deeper dive. And oftentimes that really will set a launch point for our state partners to say, okay, this is where we're at. Let's get a lay of the land. Now let's take this information and put in programs and strategies to be really successful and get people in jobs.
Keep the time we have left, a couple more Q&A points. So Francis and Laura actually both looking for a new position right now. What is your reaction to this? I'll pick on you. What do you think, Laura?
Sure. I didn't know that this existed, so this is very helpful to know. I can see sort of the push and pull of the employer getting to say something and the potential employees getting to say something. Actually, at my former position, which I left not too long ago, we were hiring, and we did basically what you just said, where we posted on LinkedIn and Indeed and thought that our dream candidate would just find us. And we did find some good candidates, but a lot that just didn't quite fit. There was just something off about where either the way that we posted it or the job description or something, where we attracted a lot of people that weren't really relevant at all. And so I like that both sides get to have their own say basically in the conversation from the start.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Thank you.
Nancy or Linnea or anybody? Questions?
Hey,
What do you?
hey, oh, go on.
Oh, go ahead, John.
Hey, Jen, just to kind of follow up on that point that you got the good match. Do you want to hit the ping slide real fast?
Sure.
That, when everybody went remote, there were college fairs, there were job fairs and that, which never were really that successful, because, what the talent would walk in, they had no idea who the companies were. They didn't know where to go. The companies didn't know them. You kind of, walked around and hoped the right person walked up to you as a company or there. But Tallow had already started before that all happened. We've been virtual for 8 years. So it's this virtual world that's how we always were. So we were building and had it ready to go, a platform that wasn't built off the traditional system that was basically flawed to begin with. So we built a very quick match kind of thing. And Jen, go with it.
It's just really straightforward. So before an event happens, talent will answer a series. Normally we try to stick to 10 questions or less. Talent seekers will answer those same 10 questions. Based on responses to those questions, every single person gets a match score. So then, Laura, in your case specifically, instead of having to filter through loads of resumes for people who aren't the right fit, you know exactly who is the right fit. So you could, as a recruiter, say, okay, for all the people who have a 75% match score, I'm going to connect with them real time. We're going to start having conversations, and we're going to start those meaningful conversations. And then maybe 75 to 50, they could be the right fit, but they're not your top priority. You're going to send them your email. Hey, I'd love to connect with you. Do any of these times work? And then the 50 below, or some will go as far as 25 and below. So not the right fit, but you want to make sure they know you as an employer are interested in them and appreciate them engaging with you. You could just send them to your website, to your careers page, to the job rec, but it gives you that in kind of a couple hours window, right? It gives you those people that are the right fit based on qualifications that you've set. So these are kind of screenshots. You can see how you build your profile, you answer your questions, you see your matches with the right score. And if they're the right fit, you can start that back and forth messaging. So we'll do this in the college space, but we'll also do it in the employer space as well. And we've seen a ton of traction with this, specifically with veterans and their spouses. We're doing a lot of work in South Carolina with the military.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Is there a closing thought or question from anybody who voice that we haven't heard from? I know people are always juggling a lot of stuff, but Abby or Ian or Woody or Linnea, or any closing thing, we'd certainly welcome that. Ian, anything jumps out to you?
I was listening. I work for the city of Sanford. You know, we struggle with recruiting government type positions. You know, the unique skill set in wanting to do that kind of work and able to do that kind of work. It's also unique, I think, to Maine, different there. And then also I was listening for some discussions related to housing. You know, the jobs, I'd say in my experience in moving here a long time ago was, you know, there's a lot of, we'll call them big boy jobs, you know, because you either have our population center being Portland and the attractiveness of that location, but, you know, Maine is a really large state. But finding housing outside of that population center is so those are just some of my thoughts. I hope they're not closing, but I hope we can keep on talking about them. And then I just struggle with in the day-to-day, you know, currently the environment is tough across the sector, you know, across all sectors, you know, getting contractors for any kind of work is difficult. And the typical you know, ones that we've been dealing with over the year, the massive demand, you know, is electricians, right? The solar panel, just but you know, those just the labor type positions as well are, but we know about all that. So thanks.
Again, thanks, Ian, for that little dose of reality. I mean, there's so much work to be done here and so much opportunity too. Well, I want to move towards a closing because I know people are busy. I want to thank the Tallow team. You'll get some follow-up. You'll get you'll get the slides. I hope that we can keep this discussion going. Stephanie from IntWork, we're going to share some of your information too. I want to highlight that we have another great discussion coming up on a very different topic, industrial wood pellet markets, coming up, another E2Tech Connects in a couple of weeks. So make sure that you get involved with that one. if you would. And thank you for being a member of E2Tech. Thanks for helping us build what we do. We are looking at, if you'll do a little save the date, a mixer on December 1st, Wednesday, at probably one of the Portland area brew pubs, which will also be our annual meeting. This is the time of year when we are recruiting for our board and committees too. So if you're interested in that, now's the time to let us know. So with that, I will thank you so much. We'll wrap it up there and kind of exit stage left. But thank you again to the John and Jen with the Tallow team. And we hope to see everybody again soon, and keep taking on these big issues here at E2Tech. So enjoy the day, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks,
Okay.
Marty.
Thank you.
Thank you all, guys.